Hi, this is a tutorial on how to prevent nightmares, and it's actually an emotional freedom technique hack or EFT or tapping hack that only takes 5 minutes to do just before you go to sleep, and it helps reduce the intensity and frequency of nightmares. So here we go with the how to prevent nightmares tutorial. So I'm going to just run through what it is we're going to cover today. Firstly, we're going to cover what actually causes nightmares, the key to having a restful sleep, the 5-minute EFT routine that I'm going to teach you in order to prevent nightmares before you go to sleep, a morning routine that you can do if you wake up and you've been suffering with nightmares that night, or you're just waking up feeling out of sorts, emotional or feeling a bit down or whatever. I can teach you a routine in the morning to just lift your spirits and get you into the day feeling a lot better. I'm also going to go through an easy way to reduce the stress build up during the day, because what happens is we accumulate stress up over the day, and then at the end of the day we go to sleep and we have to process all of that stress and all of those emotions and thoughts in our sleep, which if we've had a lot of stress build up, we have a lot to process. So it's good to be able to do just a little bit of work on ourselves during the day in order to just decrease that stress build up and keep ourselves in a better flow. And then once we get to the end of the day, we don't have so much processing to do ourselves in order to get into a good mind frame for sleep. And I'm also going to talk to you about some self-love activities that we can do just to enhance our energy and make us feel a bit better after we've reduced negative symptoms. It just kind of like balances it out and lifts your spirits into a better place rather than just a neutral. So let's get into it. What causes nightmares? In that 5-minute window as we drift off to sleep, if you're feeling unhappy, you're feeling stressed, or you're in pain, your body is going to pick up on this energy space and it's going to take you into your sleep within the energy space that you're in. So let's just have a look at the difference between good dreams versus bad dreams and where they come from. In the nights that you've had good dreams, you'll find that you've actually been doing something uplifting before you've gone to bed. You may have been watching funny movies, or you've been enjoying time with your family, or you've been having a really good conversation, or maybe you've been reading a really inspiring, motivating book. Whatever it was that you were doing just before you went to bed is going to prime you for that energy space that you're going to be in as you drift off to sleep. So if we're experiencing positive emotions, positive thoughts, and positive sensations in our body, then that's going to reflect the sort of night's sleep that we get. Now, on the reverse, if we're having a bad day and we've had lots of stress, we have lots of negative thoughts or confusing or stressful thoughts to process, our mind has been racing with trying to come up with solutions, coming into obstacles, being triggered and that kind of thing, then obviously our bodies are going to be under much more stress and we're going to be feeling more negative emotions, we're going to be thinking more negative thoughts, and in reflection our bodies are going to be talking to us in the sense that we're going to be feeling discomfort, maybe pain, maybe digestion issues. All of these sorts of things, like I say, set us up for the energy space in which we are going to be drifting off to sleep and inducing the kinds of dreams that we have. Now, as we look at the bad dreams side of this slide, if we're watching movies that are thriller types or they're inducing either fear or violence or anything negative that's going to stir up negative emotions or thoughts in you, those sorts of movies and books and any kind of interaction with arguing or being in a bad mind frame, being stressed, anything like that, is going to give you obviously a negative space just before you drift off to sleep. Now, it's very important, this few minutes just before you drift off to sleep, and we feel like we wouldn't have much control over it, except that there is a tool called the emotional freedom technique that can actually decrease symptoms almost instantly within a minute or two. So we're going to look at how we can actually change this energy space that we're in as we drift off to sleep using this EFT tool. So obviously having happy thoughts equals having happy dreams, right? Now that we know this, we can take a step towards setting ourselves up for bed and sleep in the right way. But obviously this is very difficult, especially with people that are going through a hard time, or they're going through PTSD, or they have mental health issues. This can be very challenging to calm yourself and get into a good space, which is why I have this picture showing of pigs flying, because sometimes suggesting that you just make sure that you get into a happy space is about as easy as pigs flying. And I acknowledge that, and that's why I'm here to talk to you about a brilliant tool called EFT. Now, EFT can provide immediate relief to all sorts of symptoms, including emotion, negative thoughts, discomfort and pain, just to name a few. So I'm going to introduce you to EFT and how to use it to get into this happy space so that you can drift off to sleep in a good space. Now, I came up with this routine as I was experiencing an emotional flashback a few years ago, and I had intense nightmares and I had huge suffering going on at night with all sorts of symptoms: the racing heart, the sweating, the panic attacks, and it was very unbearable. So I used my creative spark that I had at the time around using EFT for everything, and I decided to see if I could develop something for sleeping better and getting myself into a better state before I went to bed, and hopefully this would help me reduce my nightmares and what I experienced during the night. So I was relieved when I came up with an EFT routine that I could use just before I went to sleep to help reduce my symptoms enough so that I could feel at least neutral before I went to sleep. Now, the concept behind all of this is that you need to reduce any symptoms that you're feeling just before you go to sleep, in that small window of drifting off to sleep. If you reduce any symptoms that you're feeling, then your body is in a neutral state where your body isn't reacting, your mind isn't in a state of reaction to these negative symptoms, and therefore sleep is significantly better. So this is the routine. We take a little bit of time just to sit comfortably. I just did it on my bed, lay on my bed, or sat up on my bed, closed my eyes and just rested for a few moments, just enough to sense what symptoms were going on for me. And you would start with the most intense ones. So if I closed my eyes and I thought, right, I'm feeling anxious, there's a pain in my leg, and I have this thing that's on my mind. I'd bring my attention to my symptoms, and then I would work through them from most intense to least intense. So if my anxiety was my most intense, I would tap on the points, the EFT points, and say, even though I'm feeling anxiety, or even though I'm feeling anxious, I deeply and completely accept myself. Even though I'm feeling anxious, I deeply and completely accept myself. Even though I'm feeling anxious, I deeply and completely accept myself. Even though I'm feeling anxious, I deeply and completely accept myself. Even though I'm feeling anxious, I deeply and completely accept myself. Even though I'm feeling anxious, I deeply and completely accept myself. Even though I'm feeling anxious, I deeply and completely accept myself. Even though I'm feeling anxious, I deeply and completely accept myself. So that's one round of EFT, and once I'd processed the anxiety and reduced it, I'd usually only have to do one round, but some people need a couple of rounds to reduce a symptom. And then I would bring it down to around about a three or less. And then I'd move on to the next most intense one. So if the next most intense symptom was the pain in my leg, I would tap on the pain in my leg by saying, even though I have this sharp pain in my thigh, I deeply and completely accept myself. And I'd do that on all of the points. And then if I was thinking something that was bugging me or stressing me out, I would say that in a sentence as well. So even though I can't stop thinking about how this person annoyed me today by saying blah blah blah, I deeply and completely accept myself. And what helps is to bring the emotion that you're feeling into the tapping. So if you're having a thought, a negative thought, the important things about that negative thought are what the thought is and also how it's making you feel. So even though I feel frustrated because, and then the thought, or even though I'm fearful, or even though I'm worried, or even though I'm stressed, and you bring that into it, and that is what helps eliminate it. It's attaching it to that emotion. So once you've gone through all of the symptoms that you're experiencing, and you've got them down to about a 3 or less, then you feel again for any more symptoms. You don't need to be too much of a perfectionist about it. If there's minor symptoms and you're really stressed out and you can't get your head around them, that's fine. Just leave them, get rid of the majority and go to sleep. If you're feeling more capable of doing EFT for longer and really getting those symptoms down more in detail, then that's fine too. Just do what feels right for you. You don't need to stress out about it too much. You can experiment with this, and if it doesn't quite work and you wake up with a nightmare, you can do this before you go to sleep again. So that's the routine. So now that you've reduced your symptoms, you'll find that you're in a much better energy space to drift off to sleep, and you should significantly reduce your frequency or intensity of your nightmares. Mine definitely reduced by at least 80%. It really worked well for me, so I'm really hoping that it works well for you too.